there has been a person out in the trenches trying to promote Bermuda. And Cheryl Packwood, CEO of Business Bermuda, said to me just recently, and she authorized me to quote her, "Term limits do not protect Bermudian jobs. The labor and immigration laws, if applied, are what protect Bermudian jobs. The Bermuda government needs to review those laws and bring them up to date. There have been many issues holding the promotion of Bermuda back as an attractive destination for financial services, including the term limit policy. The term limit policy was viewed as an additional risk factor,
1 minute, Mr.
and
Johnson.
therefore made Bermuda potentially a less attractive jurisdiction to set up business. It was perceived by some foreign businesses as prejudicial to foreigners in general. There were foreign businesses which did not inform me there were foreign businesses which did inform me that they chose other jurisdictions to set up business precisely because of the term limit policy." So here we are talking about the term limit policy, and the Bermuda Employers Council supports its elimination because of the matter of the impact of the economy, the leaders in the industry, and there's no legal basis for it. The BEC had had a survey which said that a majority of its members thought Bermuda needed to be a better place to do business, including term limit reform. And let me leave you with a quick picture of the impact of where we are with Bermuda's economy. Up to 2007 and 8, we had growth. 2009, 5.1% decline. Additional 2010, a 2.2 decline, and additional in 2011, another 2.8 decline. Okay. So in our view, we think that term limits should be eliminated.
All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Last but not least, I want to introduce Brother Chris Ferber, JP, President of the Bermuda Industrial Union. Chris Ferber has served the Bermuda Industrial Union for all of his adult working life, firstly through his employment with Stevedore Service on the Hamilton Docks. Brother Chris was offered a management position at Stevedore Services Limited. Instead, he chose to take up the position of as a full-time organizer with the BIU in 1995, in spite of the pay packet offered by Stevedore Services Limited. In March of 2006, Brother Chris was elected as president of the BIU, after having served as a vice president for 10 years. Prior to that, Brother Chris served as the second vice president and held that position for 8 years. Brother Chris has also served as president of the Port Workers Division of the BIU for 15 years. Brother Chris is also president of the Pembroke Hamilton Club. Brother Chris? About 5 minutes.
Thank you, Brother Sumner. Let me say good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and protocol having been established. I want to begin to you tonight by saying that in a statement given to the media that appeared in the Royal Gazette on Thursday, February 7, 2013, the minister says the government has been accused of failing to properly consult organized labor and the general public on its decision on term limits. The minister went on to say that stakeholders were given 5 days to give feedback on the document that was sent out on the 23rd of January. But, ladies and gentlemen, this evening I think that it's vitally important, and it's an excellent turnout, so I assume that you are concerned about this topic. A few moments ago, when the shadow minister spoke, he mentioned this whole part about consultation. And I think the challenge will always be, when you're going to try to do something, is to make sure that you involve the public. The government in its election campaign said that they would basically suspend term limits for 2 years, and then they'll come and make a decision after that. So you have to ask yourself the $64,000 question. Why a turnaround in a 6-week period? That's the $64,000 question that needs to be answered. Having said that, I think that in addition to that, the BIU is very concerned about the consultation process as it relates to the general public. Because whilst the email was sent out to various stakeholders on the 23rd of January, giving them to the 28th of January midday to respond, where was the input or the feedback from the general public? So the stakeholders would include all the people that was in the email, the Employers Council, and the unions would have probably been in that email, because we had 2 people sitting on the committee prior to the OBA becoming the government on the 17th of December. So where was the consultation with the general public as relates to the elimination of term limits? Because they certainly deserve a right to have consultation. I think you heard the shadow minister say that before the PLP made a decision to put the term limits in place, there was a considerable amount of consultation that took place before it happened. Having said that, the BIU firmly believes that, and the minister says that what the government will do now is to strengthen the immigration policies. They're looking at instituting certain guidelines within the policies. So the BIU firmly believes that until the strengthening of the immigration policies take place, there may be term limits should remain in place until the strengthening of those policies took place. Let me be crystal clear from the BIU's point of view. The BIU believes that we need foreign capital in our country, and we need to have migrant workers or guest workers in our country because of the size of our economy. So whether we have 35,000 jobs or 38,000 jobs, we simply don't have enough communities to fill them jobs, so we're always going to need the migrant workers to be here to provide that service to our economy. But it simply cannot come at the expense of a Bermudian can be gainfully employed in their country. And that's the challenge I think we have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard from the panelists. We do have a couple of mics in the aisle, and we're going to ask that if you may have a question for either of the panelists, that you may cue to the bottom mics. And let's try to keep it quickly, and hopefully the response will be back just as quickly from the panelists that you posed it to. And also, just for a point of clarity to everybody, you did see the panelists looking at information, graphs and things of that nature. You can find some in the back of the two tables there. And if we ran out, I've also left a list where you can put your name and your email address where we can forward some information to you. And that would be from the Migrant Workers Committee. So with that said, I think we have one on the left first, and then the brother on the right. So quickly, if you can, introduce yourself and who the question is for, please. Alona?
Good evening. How are you doing? My name is Arnold Smith. I'm the president of the Telephone Division. My question is, Mr. Minister, and this is Minister Fahey, you mentioned how term limits are scrapped, and you mentioned how the Department of Immigration is to protect the rights of Bermudian workers. That's what I read from you, right? But we have the president of the union who is now no longer on the immigration board, but the union is to protect the workers. I have a problem with that, understanding that logic. Can you explain that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Minister.
Thank you. The Immigration Board is made up of representatives from different areas of business, including an individual from one of the unions. So there is a union representative, not necessarily from the Bermuda Industrial Union, but there is someone who represents labor interests on the Immigration Board. I would also, let me make something very clear again in relation to the government's position on Bermudian employment. We absolutely recognize that there are flaws in the work permit process. They are unrelated to term limits, period. That's the fact. What we do need to do is we need to make sure that Bermudians are given legitimate opportunities to be employed in Bermuda.
Minister,
we accept that.
If you don't mind, let me just say, the brother did ask a question in regards to the BIU and have a representation on the Immigration Board, but not anything else. And I think that in all fairness, and while I do respect the other unions that are represented here, certainly when we have a vast number of members within the BIU and the hotels and other important industries in this country, why somebody from the BIU wouldn't be on that board? I think that's the question the brother was asking. Thank you.
The answer to the question, again, is what I could do is I could say we'll have someone from the BPSU, we'll have someone from the BIU, we'll have someone from the TUC. I would have every single member on
That's
there.
how it used to be.
Well, this is ministerial discretion. What we have is a labor representative on there in addition to members from different areas of business. That is how the board has been appointed.
Okay. All right. Shadow Minister, you wanted to say something?
Yes.
Go quickly.
Just a brief comment. It would seem that the minister and his government, in order to build public confidence, would have sought balance with the board, particularly in this particular period of time, in this period of time where workers in particular and working people feel lack of confidence in their work situation, that the better thing, as the Progressive Labor Party government endeavored to ensure better labor representation on the board.
Let's stop with that one real quick. Okay, we appreciate you, Shadow. Yes, sir. The brother of the Burgundy.
Good night. Sorry. Okay. Good night. My name is Quentin Stovall. I'm the president of Q-Ship Enterprises Limited. I have a land surveying company. My concern is, and this is open to the panel, taking the historic context of Bermuda. Prior to the PLP, employment was wild, wild west. It was brought somewhat under control. So now we have a new government, the OBA, who has swung completely 180 degrees. I live in the real world. I suspect the truth lies somewhere in between. This is just my supposition. I would like you guys to share with me your vision. What does your Bermuda of the future look like for my son and my daughter? Elaborate, please.
Who do you want that to go to, Bob? Anybody in particular? Anybody? Anybody?
Open to the panel.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and that's a great question. The One Bermuda Alliance has undertaken any number of initiatives, and we will continue to do to ensure full employment for Bermudians in Bermuda. That's key. Bermudians live in a place that has many other people who wish to work here, but we need to make sure that Bermudians have full employment. So that means that as a government, we need to make sure that Bermudians are properly trained for the workplace, that they're given opportunities through any number of courses and training initiatives, and making sure that businesses employ Bermudians when they have those qualifications. That is how we have to make sure that we move forward as a country. Full Bermudian employment. At the moment, it's something like 9% unemployment, and we have to fix that.
Thank you, Minister. Anybody else? Response? Okay. Sir?
Yes, good evening, Brother Sumner. Good evening, panelists. I'd like to say a special good evening to Senator Michael Fay.
Somebody else have
Please
something?
excuse me.
Hang on, just one.
Minister Shadow, you want to say something?
You want to say
Yes.
something? Real quick.
I find the minister's comment interesting. It was perhaps that's the answer that many people would have been assured with prior to the changes announced for the term limit policy. And I do not disagree with the minister that the term limit policy was not necessarily something to protect Bermudian jobs. But actions by the government which do not endear confidence from the public will bring about some of the reactions and confusion that you have suggested if, one, you don't assure them that their rights are going to be properly protected by the changes you've made, as well as making perhaps more meticulous steps when you change policies like the term limit policy. The immediate change is what's brought the concerns of that gentleman about his future and his children's future. So those are the things that perhaps the government essentially put the cart before the horse on this one, and you would have endeared better public confidence by taking meticulous steps first and then moving to change the policy. If you so wish, you had every right to do it.
All right. Thank you.
If I may, because I think that's a mischaracterization, I'm afraid.
Real quick.
Again, let's make the policy change very clear indeed. Term limits do not affect the employment of Bermudians. This is something that has been perpetrated. It has been perpetrated. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I asked for vision. He asked for That's what he asked for.
Sir, I gave you a vision of saying that we will have policies in place to ensure Bermudians are fully employed in Bermuda for the areas in which they do.
Glenn. No. One second.
I can feel you.
Minister, if I could, and let me just for a second, Brother Chris. Listen, I think the concern is when the OBA during their platform, during the run-up to the election. Hang on. During your platform, you spoke of suspending the term limits for up to 2 years. And then just a couple of weeks in, you pulled the legs out of it and said that this policy is abolished now. I think that's the general concern here. And if I could, just before you go, brother, let me just read this one point, because this is key to a question that was emailed to us. And when it comes to these term limits, what role has the UK government played in guaranteeing that the waiver of residency contract will be supported by them if they're challenged in the courts? In other words, if somebody's been here, and let's say they go for a long period of time with no term limits, and they decide by themselves to go to the courts and challenge to get their PRC, what is the UK, how are they going to back us with this? The question for the minister.
What I can't do is speak for what the UK government's position is. What I can speak
Has there been dialogue with the UK?
No, sir, let me finish, please.
Sorry. Take it easy.
Okay. I made it very clear, I believe, when I started my statement today, how the One Bermuda Alliance government came to determination to eliminate term limits. It was indeed in our platform that it would be suspended for a period of 2 years, pending a review and the implementation of a better policy. When we took government, we came across a number of advices that had been received that made it very clear that term limits were not required to prevent the legitimate expectation of residency. That was made clear. The Act itself, under Section 7A, makes it clear that there will be no legitimate expectation when you are issued a work permit. So that is the answer to the question. When you look at something like that, it doesn't take rocket science to make a decision over a 2-year period. We had to come to determination. We've heard from a number of gentlemen on this panel. We've heard a number of gentlemen on this panel explain how term limits are affecting and were affecting employment in Bermuda and the opportunities that we're losing out to for the employment of Bermudians. Period.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moderator,
yes, sir.
The question that was asked by the gentleman, he wants to know what his future is going to look like and what his son's future is going to look like. Basically, the hill crashing of training and retraining of the workforce, as we've said and continue to say, that it failed to happen under the UP government, it failed to happen under the PRP government, and now that the ABA is in power, we want to make sure that over the next, hopefully 3 to 5 years, that people are able to be trained and retrained to take positions throughout and up and down this country. That's basically what should happen.
That's right.
We can agree on that, Mr. Ferbert.
I'm going to try and answer that gentleman's question by simply turning to, I think I have a draft copy of work permit policies, okay? I just read to you what the minister said. He had an application come across his desk for someone asking for 10 years experience. What I'm going to bring to your attention is this. A kitchen porter, a pot washer, is currently in a restricted category. A restricted category, conditions of, I'm going to read it to you. I mean, conditions of employment relating to jobs listed in a restricted category. This blew my mind when I read it. No career prospect, promotions, or long-term employment may be offered as inducement to prospective employees. Work permits granted to non-Bermudians will normally be for a maximum of 12 months. This is a guy who's come across, got the nerve to put something in for 10 years experience for a pot washer in a restricted category.
No. Okay, Brother Mike.
Positions will be regularly advertised to ensure that Bermudians are given every opportunity to apply. Where there is a need to lay off or place workers on short-term, where there is a need to lay off or place workers on short-time, non-Bermudians employees will, without exception, are to be laid off first.
Okay, Brother Mike, Listen, if anybody would like to see this document, just sign up in the form on the documents in the back. We can email that to you. But for the sake of time, if you don't mind, panelists, let me go and get the question from Brother first, and then we'll come over to Sister Peggy afterwards and keep it going that way.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, panelists. My name is Haile Mescal. I'm a construction worker. I've been in the construction industry for approximately 38 years. I graduated from the Bermuda College with a diploma in 1981. I received my top grade certification in 1984 from Celian Construction Company. And whilst we appreciate everything that's being said tonight, first I would like to congratulate the OBA on becoming the government. Secondly, I would like to say this goes to show democracy at work, because we have had two major changes in governmental seats of power since 1968. Many of the people that are here this evening are concerned with some of the same concerns I have, and whilst we appreciate and respect most of our guest workers, we get along very well with them, there are some major concerns. Please bear with me. Time belongs to God Almighty. Some employers are good and worthy of compliments. Some employers prefer guest workers due to increased profits at the expense of local employment, which has the effect of creating a more stable and social environment. This is all about money. The money Bermudians cannot live off due to it being below the rate of inflation. The money employers save by a guest worker working for low wages, even though they are twice or three times what they would make in their own homeland. We are becoming second-class citizens in our own country to some degree. Now, there are some people who may be dysfunctional. There are some people who may not have good work ethics. This is true all over the world. In Bermuda, we take pride in saying that we was former master carpenters, shipwrights, stone masons. 60% of all the dwellings in Bermuda was built by the elderly fathers and the ancient, and the elders who struggled to feed their families, house and clothe their children.
What's your question?
Now they are putting their children through college and they're coming back and can't get work. So immigration reform is something that many in the community have queried. And this must be executed immediately to identify incidences of workers here illegally and employers who generally prefer them to the detriment of our social and cultural society, as well as our paternal and maternal existence. Why not check all jobs, who is working there, and whether or not they are here illegally? This is something many people have concerns with. I respect our government. We pray for our government daily in our church. Every Sunday we ask God to send wisdom into the hearts of all our government ministers, all our business and community ministers, all our people, so that we can live in peace and harmony. But these are some valid concerns. Minister Faye, I would ask if this could be addressed, whether immigration could be upgraded or